Hello, friends. We welcome you to episode 3 of Syracuse Sports. I'm Brent Axe. We have some football voicemails to react to coming up here on episode 3, which came in after episode 2, which we hope you can watch and listen to if you haven't already, which was all about Syracuse football head coach Dino Babers and all the questions surrounding his job going into the 2023 season. But it was a voicemail about basketball from Jordan that sets us up perfectly for what we're going to talk about today on episode 3.
I think Syracuse fans should be okay with and accepting of a team that doesn't make the tournament this year. I know every season the Syracuse men's basketball is not in the NCAA tournament. The town is on fire and everybody's freaking out. New coach, a little bit different of a roster makeup than we've seen recently, and Autry's hitting the recruiting trails. If Syracuse doesn't make the NCAA tournament this season, it is not the end of the world.
Boy, that sets us up perfectly for a conversation that Mike Waters and I are about to have here. We brought in the syracuse.com basketball beat reporter, award-winning sports writer, and the host of the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast, and we're going to have some fun with this one, friends. Mike and I, draft style, select our starting 5 from the Syracuse basketball team based on the current roster with a lot of offseason insight mixed in between. Your voicemail's coming up, and one more thing, we're going to look at the tradition or lack thereof currently with Syracuse football as well. But right now, Mike Waters and I get our draft on. Let's get it. You know, one of the things that my next guest and I get asked all the time on social media, in the produce section at Wegmans, wherever it shall be, who's going to be the starting 5 for Syracuse basketball? And you know what, Mike Waters, for a long time, that didn't matter, right? Under Jim Boeheim, right? That starting 5 never seemed to matter. In certain ways, it did in others. But with Adrian Autry coming in and a whole new philosophy in some ways coming in, that's actually a really intriguing question in that realm. And it's really intriguing because, well, there's a lot of new faces on this team. And what that not only starting 5, but main 5 ends up being is going to be really interesting here. So instead of Mike and I just kind of giving you our starting 5s, we're going to do it draft style, baby. So, Mike, I don't know if that makes you like, there's no like Todd McShay and Mel Kiper for basketball, right? Shout out to Jonathan Gavoni. He's great at it, but like, I don't know like who you're supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be in the basketball draft world, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have to play any Mel Kiper characters today. I don't think I'm going to be going, Brent.
I can't do the Kiper hair. I should have done that. I should have done like the slick Mel Kiper hair here. So pick your favorite draft analyst, and Mike and I are going to, from this current Syracuse basketball roster, draft not only a starting 5, but like our best 5 in that way, right? So we're just going to go back and forth here, and we are going to determine in this draft our best 5, okay? Now, I said I was going to flip a coin to start this thing, Mike, and of course, I don't have a coin in my pocket. So I am going to give our guest the first pick here. I'm going to defer to Mike. We are going to go back and forth until we have our 5, and then we'll figure out who's left and go from there. And Mike, I hand it off to you. The first pick in the Syracuse Sports draft, to you, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me the first pick, especially since, and I have to file an objection before we get started here.
Okay.
When we came up with this idea a few days ago that we were going to have a draft of the Syracuse roster, Brent initially suggested we were going to do a snake draft. We left the meeting. It was going to be a snake. So Brent would get pick 1, I'd get 2 and 3, and then he'd get 4, and so on, like that, like a lot of drafts are done. And then the morning that we're taping the podcast, he switches it up on me after have devoted seconds, if not minutes, of prep.
It got over the minute mark. Yeah.
I mean, you know, the effort I've put into this.
I'm just, diversion tactics, smoke screens are part of drafts, Mike. You just, you know, especially that 48 hours into the draft, you never know what's out there. You got to be careful what's out there. So I'm just keeping on your toes. That's all.
Okay, then that's
All
fair.
right.
As long as I had a chance to get that out there, so everyone's understands the disadvantage I'm at right now.
Okay. With that said, with the first pick, Mike Waters, ladies and gentlemen.
How can you take anybody other than Judah Mintz to start
Yeah.
off a Syracuse draft? He started every game as a freshman at the point guard last year. He led all ACC rookies in scoring, all ACC rookies in assist. He led the entire ACC period in steals. Yeah, he just had a fantastic freshman season. And, we'll talk a little bit about where we think this next year's team's going to be. And, as we go through the draft, and when we're not just drafting, we're going to talk about the team. But, the one thing that sticks out to me with Judah is early on in last season, he struggled from 3-point range. And I don't think we really noticed how over the course of the season, he got better from 3-point range. He took better shots. He took some, he was very selective in the ones he took. He took open ones, but he started making more. And, yes, for the season, he made like 30% from 3-point range. But in ACC games, he shot 33. Now, 33 isn't going to knock your socks off, right? But if we're talking a freshman whose one area of deficiency is 3-point shooting, and that number is 33%, in conference play, that's not that bad. And I think we're probably looking at 33% as the floor for him as a sophomore, and maybe he even does a little better, and I think he's going to be okay. But yeah, Judah Mintz is the guy, number one. I didn't have to think about that one too much.
The whole tenor of the team rests on Judah. Everybody was waiting on bated breath to see whether he would come back or not as you went through the draft process. And once he did, that collective breeze you felt was Syracuse fans saying, yes, Judah is back for another year. Now, Mike, in the spirit of kind of making it up as we go along here, I'm going to make a note here before I make my official first pick here. In a different world, not so long ago, in a galaxy not so far away, my first pick here would have been Jesse Edwards.
Really?
Had he still been on this roster. And if I had your first pick, it would have been Jesse Edwards. I just think when you have a unicorn like that, a big man that can score the way he can, who's great around the basket, the rebounding aspect of it, just the player he was developing into, I think you can build so much around that. It's literally a center. It is an anchor of your team. So I just wanted that noted for the record, that Jesse would have been my first pick, okay? Now I look at the board and I say, okay, if Mike's going Judah, I got to go JJ, right? Mike's got his guard. I've got my guard. Mike, the projections are off the charts, it seems, for what this backcourt can be. People are really excited about, and I know that as we'll talk and go along here, we'll mention this, but it feels like Adrian Autry's going to mix up lineups. We could see 3 guards at times. It's not these two for 40 minutes a game, but it just feels like Judah and JJ are developing into that backcourt. So if you've got Judah, I've got to have my anchor in the backcourt. If Jesse's not available, give me JJ Sterling.
Yeah, I endorse that pick. JJ was probably the starting point guard if Judah had remained in the draft. Now that Judah comes back, I think JJ gets to play off the ball a little bit more. He'll also take a little bit of pressure off of Judah because he's another guy who can handle the ball. Another guy who can slash and get to the basket. He's got size. That's a good pick. And I really like him. And there's another one there. I talk to people and they're like, where's the 3-point shooting going to come from? And they point now to JJ as a freshman. And yes, JJ didn't shoot it all that great as a freshman at Notre Dame, but he was the flip side of Judah. Through like the first 18 games of the year last year at Notre Dame or something like that. I forget the exact number, but he was shooting 33% from 3-point range. That's not a number as a freshman that's going to cause a lot of concern. It's like, yeah, he's fine. Don't worry about him. 33%, he's good. He ended up with a shoulder injury. He had a knee injury that they ended up shutting him down at the end of the season. He didn't play in the ACC tournament. He hit a slump. And I forget what the exact numbers were, but we're talking like his last 10 games he played in, he was at 20% from 3-point range. It really dragged down his shooting percentage for the year. I think, listen, Judah and JJ, neither one of them is Joe Girard. But I think on the whole, they're going to be fine as shooters from the outside.
Well, Mike, before you make your second pick, what are you hearing about just how JJ is acclimating to this team, where he fits in terms of his style of play? Adrian Autry, of course, talked to him a lot when they were recruiting him when he was here, of course, at Baldwinsville. So it feels like it not only is it kind of a plug and play, might be a little bit too much to say, but JJ was one of the top transfers on the board, period. And he comes to Syracuse in what feels like a comfortable situation, as good as you can get as a transfer.
You hit on the exact word I was going to use, and that's comfortable. He's come home. It's a program he's familiar with. It's a coaching staff he's familiar with. Adrian Autry did a lot of recruiting of that kid back in high school. Obviously they didn't get him. He stayed at Notre Dame, stayed down that Indiana area after going to prep school out there for a couple of years. But it feels like he's sliding in, and he's going to be a natural fit there in the backcourt with Judah. And also some of the other players, and we're going to get to them soon as we continue to draft guys. He gives Syracuse and Adrian Autry a lot of flexibility here. And I think we're going to keep using that. There's going to be flexibility, versatility, multi-positional guys.
Yeah, it feels like that. So on to pick number 2 for Mike Waters, the third overall pick of the draft.
Third overall pick in the draft. There's a lot of ways you can go here.
There really is.
I know, right? I'm going Benny Williams.
Oh,
good. I love it when
I wanted Benny.
Guy's draft pick. People look back on Benny's sophomore year. It was his first full year as a starter. Really the first, he didn't hardly played as a freshman. So he comes in, he starts like every game, or close to every, no, not every game, like 30 out of 32 games. They think, he was a starter. And then they look at his numbers, 7 points a game, 4 rebounds a game. And you're not dazzled by that. You have to remember, he only played 22 minutes a game. If you now think of Benny Williams as a sixth man coming off the bench and playing 22 minutes, your perception of last season changes. You're like, wow, 7 points and 4 rebounds off the bench. That's fantastic. I think as he becomes more comfortable in the program, he's been a full-time starter for a full season. God, you look back at last year and he made 39% of his 3-point attempts. That's outstanding for a 6'9" forward. And I think we'll see him do more. And the one thing, I talked with Adrian Autry earlier this summer about Benny, and they talked about him being stronger, which is going to help him in terms of rebounding, and it's going to help him in terms of finishing around the basket. And if he starts doing that, I think you got a guy who can give you double-figure scoring, and he can improve his rebounds by 2.5 a game.
Mike, I think what everybody agreed with watching Benny last year was something along the lines of, man, when it all comes together for this kid, he is just going to be a hell of a player. And look, he went through some stuff. He was away from the team there a little bit, had some personal things going on. I think people had him locked in as somebody who would transfer away in the offseason, but he committed to it. He came back. And when it does all come together for Benny, like this could be an all ACC type of player. And I feel like this is the year to do it. He was going to be my big upside pick. You mentioned some of the great attributes of his game, inside and outside. We saw it in that ACC tournament game against Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great pick, Mike. That was a great pick. So now I've got to make a decision here. And it's something you brought up earlier. Where's the 3-point shooting going to come from on this team, right? There's a lot of possibilities here. And I want a 3-point shooter, which I may have in JJ, like you said.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So I'm debating between 3 names here. I'm going to go with this one here. With the 4th overall pick, my second pick, I'm going to take Malik Brown. I'm going to take Malik Brown. I just love his presence around the basket. I love how he finishes. I love his hustle. I just want that consistent inside presence, because we haven't got to this position yet, but when we do, there's a lot of question marks surrounding the center position with Jesse gone.
Yeah.
There's only 3 listed forwards on this team. Like now, Justin Taylor can go either way, and Chance Westry can go either way. There's a couple of versatile guys. Don't get me wrong, but
Quadir Copeland can play the 3.
Quadir can absolutely play the 3.
Yeah.
Just give me the pure muscle around the basket guy and what his game grows into. And I'm going to throw that over to you, Mike. Have you talked to the coaches about him? How do you feel Malik's game can grow this year? I'm taking an upside pick here, which I was going to do with Benny as well. And I think if Malik comes into his own here, I'm going to feel pretty good about this one.
I'm sensing a lot of excitement about Malik Brown within the program. A guy who, Syracuse fans saw him last year, just a nose for the ball, especially around the boards, always seemed to be in the right spot for that offensive putback. Knew his game, knew enough to stick around in the paint, and that's where he got his shots from. Found openings in there, but I'm getting that they like the versatility. Again, there's that word. He can play the 4 if Benny comes out or if Benny moves to the 3. There's Malik Brown. Or, and this is going to be really key this season, going to be really interesting, Malik at the 5. We saw him a little bit last year at the 5. I think we might see him more as they look to play man-to-man. When they want to go a little smaller and they want to be athletic and active and push the pressure out, you see Malik Brown at the 5 a lot. And the one time you wouldn't see him at the 5 in a man-to-man situation is if you're going up against North Carolina with an Armando Bacot, who's, a mountain, or DJ Burns of NC State, who's a bigger mountain. Guys like that. And, those times you'll have other guys that you can slide in there, or you go zone. But Malik Brown, interesting pick, Brent. And
now let me slide this in there before
my draft board. Now I got
good.
I got a huddle.
You threw a monkey wrench in mine, so I threw one right back in your spokes. So let me just say this real quick before you make your next pick. Here's my question about Malik. How much did he benefit last year from the presence of Jesse Edwards, right? The double teams and the defensive attention that went Jesse's way. He would kind of get some of those open baskets. He's just got to create on his own a little bit more. I think he's capable of that.
Yeah, okay. Right. When Jesse was on one side of the lane, Malik's guy was paying attention to Jesse, and Malik could slide in for that weak side rebound. Yeah, you're right.
That's right.
We'll see. Right. It's a challenge.
Pick 5, Mike's 3rd overall pick.
Boy, this really gets tough at this point.
Decisions.
I know, right? I was going to go one way with this pick, but I'm going to change my mind at the last minute, and I'm going to take Chris Bell.
Okay, Chris Bell.
I like Chris Bell a lot. I think he grew a lot last year, thrown into the fire, started 30 out of 32 games as a freshman. We were talking earlier about 3-point shooting. Chris Bell last year, what was it? He's second on the team to Girard and made 3-pointers. He made
39 threes last year. Yeah.
And it's not just that, it's his overall shooting too. He finishes the year at 34% from 3-point range, 35%, something like that. But you know what? He was shooting 40% through mid-January. He was at 40. And I think if you remember, Chris Bell, he was a slender guy, starting all the time. I think he hit a little bit of a freshman wall. His shooting really, tailed off towards the end of the season. I think there's a chance that we see Chris Bell shoot 38 to 40% from 3-point range for the entire season this year. And I know, we were talking with Malik without Jesse, will Chris Bell get as many open looks without Joe Girard? We'll have to see. Now, some of that's going to have to come from the creativity of J.J. Starling and Judah Mintz, maybe. Guys who drive the ball and attract defenders versus Joe Girard, who always, whose defenders never left him. But I think Chris Bell is in line for a good season. And we'll recall, too, Chris Bell was criticized a lot by Jim Boeheim last year for his lack of rebounding.
Yes.
He only averaged 1.5 rebounds a game at the small forward spot. Now, it's not a lot. But you know what? In his last 6 games of the season last year, he averaged 3 rebounds a game. And if you took out one game against Duke where he had 0 in 11 minutes, he got benched, it's 3.5 rebounds a game in his last 5. I mean, that's enough for me for a small forward. And especially when you remember, he was only getting about 22, 23 minutes a game. So, yeah, Chris Bell's my guy. I'm going with the shooter.
I'm still kind of wondering what kind of player Chris Bell is. And you brought it up. The rebounding was an issue. Is he a 3-point shooter? What kind of forward is he? What kind of player is he? We're going to find that out as we go here. I don't know if the current structure of the team and where they're going settles that or creates more questions. But, man, when he's on and he's hitting, and, Mike, you've heard the stories. I've heard the stories about how he can light it up at practice.
Yep.
I like that pick. Now, let's remind everybody who's off the board so far. Mike started things off with Judah Mintz. Then I went J.J. Starling. Mike to Benny Williams. Me to Malik Brown. And Mike just took Chris Bell. So that's who's off the board to this point. I have the second alternate universe pick. Had Joe Girard been on the roster, this is where I would have taken him, just to have that consistent, senior three-point shooter, know what I'm getting, no question marks, just this is my guy, plug and play. So just for the record, Joe would have been my third pick, the 6th overall. With that said, with the 6th pick, I'm going to take Justin Taylor. I still have a lot of questions about Justin. I feel like he can make a huge adjustment from year 1 to year 2. I love that you, Mike, as you put it with Chris Bell, I love that he was thrown into the fire, tried to figure some things out. There wasn't too much pressure on him last year, but I think he earned enough last year and showed enough last year that he could go into this offseason knowing exactly what he had to work on. And I think his role is a little more defined this year. And I'm just looking for three-point shooters, right? And I think Taylor, just from who's left on the board, because I honestly don't know enough about Chance Westry. Maybe you're going to swoop in, take him next, and make me look stupid here. But Justin Taylor, to me, like, I just have this vision in my head, guy on the wing, open for three, and if he can sharpen up that game, I just feel good about the leap that he can make this year. What if anything, are you hearing about Justin's offseason, Mike?
Well, for one reason to like your pick there is you look at Justin's freshman year shooting from three-point range. I hope people understand how hard it is for a freshman to shoot 39% from three-point range in a bench role. You know, you're coming in cold. You don't know where you are in the flow of the game. And yet he makes nearly 40% in that bench role. I think he's outstanding. What I'm hearing a little bit about Justin Taylor this year is, first of all, tremendous shape. Like, he has brought himself through the summer and through summer camp, and he's looking really, really good. And, you know, any concern we might have about, you know, can he play man-to-man defense? I think those are being put to rest right now. So, yeah, I think we're going to see Justin Taylor with a little time at the 2 and a lot of time at the 3 this year.
Okay, I'm feeling much better about that pick. Rock on. That's a great stat, by the way, 39%. For a bench guy, like you said, he's coming in cold. Some games he's getting, you know, solid minutes. Some games he's just making a cameo appearance. That's pretty good. And the question you brought up there, Mike, applies to all these players, by the way, how they adjust to the man-to-man defense, which is going to be a fascinating storyline going into this season.
Yeah, we might get into that here with a few more guys left on the board.
All right. So we are on to pick number 7 overall and Mike's 4th pick of this draft.
This is a guy I almost took with my previous pick, but I held off because I wanted that three-point shooting from Chris Bell. But now at this point, I am very, very happy to see Naheem Big Duke McLeod still on the board. And I am taking who in my lineup is going to be my starting center. And I think he might even be the starting center for the Orange this season. If for no other reason, then why wouldn't you want a 7'4" guy to jump the opening tap for you?
Exactly. He's huge, Mike. I mean, I remember when Syracuse would play Florida State, you're just like, man, that is like the best off the bus guy in the ACC almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And Syracuse is going to look really good in the airport or walking off the bus when you consider you got Naheem McLeod at 7'4", you got William Patterson at 7'2", Munir Hema at 6'11", and Peter Carey at 6'11". That's a lot of height. And it's one reason why I waited on Naheem. I also waited on him because I was hoping and praying that after you took Malik, that you'd look for shooting in the 3rd round, and I would get Naheem. So that works out for me. You know, we'll have to see what Naheem can give Syracuse this year. Obviously, a very limited role at Florida State. Spent the last 2 years there. You know, about 3.5, 4 points per game, about 3 rebounds per game, while only playing 13 minutes a game last year. That's not a lot of time. When I've talked to the coaches this year, though, they're very, very happy with him. They like him. They like his experience. First of all, if you have to replace a Jesse Edwards, it's great to do it with a guy who's got ACC experience. They say he can catch and finish. They like his touch around the basket. They think they might get a little bit more offense out of him than some people are thinking. but it's like, how long can a 7'4", 255-pound guy expected to be played? You know, how long can you really keep him on the court? So they're really working on conditioning with him. And I think, probably, if he's playing well, you hope you can get 20 to 25 minutes a game out of him, which is still going to give a lot of time at the 5 to other folks like Malik Brown, Munir Hema, or, Peter, the younger guys, Carey and Patterson. We'll see. We'll have to see. But I'm taking Naheem, because how can you pass on anybody with a nickname like Big Duke?
You can't let him fall too fall down the board just for that reason alone, right there. That's fantastic. All right, now I got some choices to make, because I've got Malik, who can play the 5. I've got shooting. I've got a guard that can lead the way. So now I'm left with, do I go center? Do I go with an unknown transfer, or a couple of those names who are still on the board? Or do I go with a player I hope makes a leap, takes advantage of his minutes, can play a couple of different positions? And man, I just love the way he plays. So between him and somebody I'm not quite sure about yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about, I am going to take Quadir Copeland here.
Yeah, I knew you were going there.
I'm going to put Copeland on the board here, which brings up a conversation, Mike. I don't know what your next pick's going to be, but it brings up a conversation, because I'll just say flat out, I was debating between either Quadir or Chance Westry, right?
Sure.
To use the pun, do I take a chance on Chance, knowing what I've heard, knowing what I've seen in highlights and, the great coverage that you and Donna have had about these transfers? But I just don't know enough about Chance. And I know in a draft, you have to take some chances here. The puns are just flowing left and right now.
You're beginning to sound like ABBA.
I really am. I just love how Q plays. I just love how hard he plays. I love the versatility. I love that glue guy aspect that's there with him. So I'm going to go with a little bit more of what I do know, as opposed to, I don't feel like I'm a team that can, I don't want to say waste a draft pick. That's not the right way to phrase it, but I'm not taking a flyer here. I'm going to go with the sure thing, at least in my mind. And maybe in a few months, we're going to look at this and be like, boy, Chance Westry has just boomed onto the scene here. There's an injury thing there with him too. So I'm going to go Quadir, toss it to you, Mike, and see where you go with Chance still on the board, a couple intriguing players still left.
First of all, going back to Quadir, he could be a lot more valuable given his strengths as a multi-positional guy and a really good defender, now that Syracuse is going to play a little bit more man-to-man than he was in a zone. Because in a zone, well, you're either playing him up top, which is fine. You can put a guard up top, but he's how much does he really impact the game there? Or you had to slide him to small forward, where now he's a 6'6" guy, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a liability on the boards if all of a sudden the other team's power forward or center is on his side of the floor, just backing him, pounding him on the glass. If Syracuse is in man-to-man, Quadir Copeland can guard the 1, 2, 3, or even the 4. Because he's 6'6", he's got quick feet, he's got long arms. I think he can be a force defensively. So does that strength get him on the floor more this year than it was able to in the past when Syracuse was in a zone? So, yeah, I like the pick. You're going to go man-to-man, and Quadir Copeland is going to, lead your harassing defense there, Brent. Good job. My pick, well, you let him drop to me, and I'm going to take a chance on Chance.
There you go.
I have to take the Auburn transfer. It remains to be seen where he's going to be as the season gets underway. At Auburn last year, he only played in 11 games. He was shut down after around late December, early January, after not playing a lot because of a knee injury. I've heard this summer they've been taking it very slow with him. He is working out. He is doing drills and stuff. I don't know if he's gotten into the 5-on-5s yet. They want to be very careful with him and bring him along. But if you're talking a 6'6" guy with a point guard's mentality, a guy who can see the floor and distribute, and I know that the three-point shooting may not be there, but I'm still going to put him in a backcourt with Judah and just let him go. Maybe I even give him the ball some and let Judah play off the ball. And I'm going to have to rely maybe more on my forwards, Chris Bell and Benny Williams, for some 3-point shooting. That might be the one area of the game where I'm going to worry about a little bit with my 5. But, you got to go back and look. He was the 39th ranked player in the recruiting class in 2022. That's talent. There's talent there. There's something there. So I'll take him, and we'll bring Chance along throughout the fall.
So I'm down to my final pick here, and I'm looking at some names that all would fit into either the unknown category, recovering from injury category, or they've scratched the surface category, right?
Yeah.
Which in a draft, eventually you're going to get to that pick where you're just like, hey, man, let's take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So with my 5th and final pick and the 10th and final pick of this draft, I am going to take Monir Hima.
Okay.
Just because of the names left on the board, he's the one I feel the most comfortable with. I saw enough from Monir last year that I was impressed by. I mean, Jesse Edwards just vacuumed up all the minutes and was such a focus on that position. But in those moments when Jesse was off the court, I walked away saying, yeah, Monir needs more time in the oven, if you will, but I like the skill set there. And I like what he can bring to the table. You brought it up, Mike, in the man-to-man defense now. I mean, I'm intrigued to see what he does there. I feel like his game's still raw in a lot of ways, but I didn't look at it last year and say, oh boy, let's not see him again on the court for the next 2 years. I walked away saying, okay, there's something there. So as I've turned to you a few times here, Mike, and I'll do again, what's the offseason buzz on Monir and what kind of role he can step into this year?
The big thing I'm hearing with Monir is he's healthy again. You go back to last season, and it might have been a little bit underreported because the coaches weren't talking a lot about it. But, Monir was, he had a few nagging injuries. And for a big guy, especially like one of his injuries involved a foot, that's really tough for a big guy to play through, right? For 2 reasons. From February 1st on, he didn't play more than 6 minutes in a game. No more than 6 minutes. And one reason was the injuries. And the other one was they decided they were riding Jesse Edwards because Jesse was playing so well. And also Jesse learned to stay out of foul trouble, by the, midway point of the season last year. That kind of started to go away. So he could stay on the floor. But, I like Monir. I mean, early on in the season, God, you remember those 7 block shots against St. John's down to
that's right. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
How many, reserve centers register 7 blocks in a game? That was a game where Jesse was in huge foul trouble. So, yeah, you got yourself – you had 2 ways you could have gone with that last pick. You could have gotten yourself a legitimate, bona fide center in Monir and then move Malik Brown to the 4. Or you could have gone with a smaller lineup and said, no, Malik's at the 5, and this would have worked. And you could have taken maybe Kyle Cuff, the transfer from Kansas. Now, he hasn't played in 2 years. He was a redshirt as a freshman. He had a knee injury that, 2 games into last season, the poor kid goes down with a knee injury. So he hasn't played in a long time. We're talking a lot of rust. But what I'm hearing about Kyle Cuff, even though we didn't end up taking him, but I'm hearing explosive athlete, potential to be a great on-ball defender. So, you could have shaped your roster there and said, you know what, I'm be a little smaller, but look at the defenders you would have had. You would have had JJ, who led JJ Starling, big guard, long arms. You would have had Kyle Cuff, explosive athlete, Quadir Copeland. Yeah. Only your Swiss Army knife of defenders. And I think what we're learning here is, Brent, I think there is a lot of not just depth, but versatility on this roster.
Yes.
And that's like one of the reasons we decided to have this little exercise and have some fun with it, because you could actually do this in a way where you could go different ways with a draft pick. It wasn't just you picked the only point guard on the team, and then I had to pick the only other point guard on the team. And you picked the only small forward on the team, and I picked the only other small forward. We could have gone a lot of ways. We could do this again.
And it'd be completely different. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. What you were just saying there about Kyle and the decision between Kyle and who was left on the board with Monier in that case or anybody else really intrigued me because, look, it's the offseason and everybody, of course, is the greatest player on the planet in the offseason. You're hearing great things. Everybody's in shape. And, it's kind of like when you watch a draft and all you hear about is the upside and maybe none of the flaws. But there were enough flaws is not the right way to put it. There's enough hesitation for me in some ways and from you, that Kyle didn't quite get drafted. But like you said, Mike, we could do this again tomorrow, and maybe he does. And I've got that smaller, quick lineup, which of the things I'm hearing in the offseason, Mike, that's the thing I'm most intrigued by. And I think that's the thing a lot of fans are intrigued by. Push the pace, quick, small lineup, hurry, let's go. Yet there's 4 big men on this team. So the intrigue and the versatility and the ability to switch the lineups here is fascinating. And we are going to talk about it much more as we go along here in the offseason. Mike and Donna are going to be writing about it. I'll be writing about it, of course, on syracuse.com. Quickly, Mike, to recap before we go, Mike's team: Judah Mintz, Benny Williams, Chris Bell, Naheem McLeod, Chance Westry. Brent's team: J.J. Starling, Malik Brown, Justin Taylor, Quadir Copeland, Monir Hema. Maybe we can talk Coach Autry into splitting off those groups that can play 5-on-5 in a practice and see who wins, and then we can determine who won the draft, Mike.
I'll suggest them for Orange Madness on October 13th.
There you go. We just set the lineup for that upcoming event just about 2 months from now. Michael, it's always great time to talk SU Hoops. It's always great to catch up with you. Appreciate you hopping on episode 3 here of Syracuse Sports. Let us know, of course, Mike has his own podcast, the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast, so please subscribe to that and listen to that. It's fantastic, and always enjoy the conversations that Mike has there. And, of course, read his work on syracuse.com. Thank you so much, sir.
Brent, this was a fun game. It felt like a game for me. I mean, I love drafts, so this was really great. We got to have a fun draft, and we talked SU hoops. What could be better than this? So thanks for having me on your podcast. And by the way, I've listened to your first a couple of them with Emily and Chris Carlson, and they've been great so far. So keep it up. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated, sir. And see, we didn't even have to do a snake draft for this to work out well.
It did work out fine.
Let's dip into the voicemail bag. And don't forget that you can send us a voicemail at 315-552-1964. A couple of good reactions came in after episode 2, which focused on Syracuse football head coach Dino Babers and his job status here at Syracuse. The first one comes in from Bill in Cortland.
I don't like to see that the current SU coach, his job's on the line. I think he's done a wonderful job developing what he gets. And I look at it because I follow other programs. He gets a 6'1", 200-pound linebacker, 3 stars, maybe. Other schools pick up 3 6'3", 225-pound linebackers out of high school, 4 stars. So I think with what he has, he's done well. Last year, I was very disappointed in his defensive line, maybe because they're small. But it seems to me if a team needed 3 or 4 yards, they ran left and got their 4 yards or 5.
That's a question mark about this year's team. The defensive line looks deep, but who stands out there? The return of Terry Lockett, I think, is really going to help there. And, of course, Caleb Okechukwu is one of the standout players at that position. But what Bill said about Dino doing just fine speaks to a column that I wrote last year, that what we saw in last year's season, now Syracuse got a little bit of everything last year, right? You start 6-0, you finish 7-6 overall with the tailspin at the end of the season. But what caused that tailspin at the end of the season? A couple of key injuries. This team, while doing the best they can with what they have, Bill, is still just 2 or 3 injuries from sliding away from contention. The depth is better. The recruiting seems to be on the rebound, but they're still just a couple of key injuries away from their season derailing. Let's take a listen to our second voicemail, also about Dino Babers, and you're going to hear a couple of different voices in this one.
But the question that I have is, what's the alternative? So you get rid of Dino Babers, and then what? Okay, who are you going to hire? Who's Syracuse going to get at that point? Because the problem is that there aren't a lot of coaches available, in the landscape that would be an upgrade over Dino Babers. So let's think about that. Obviously, he has to make a bowl game, but beyond that, I think he stays.
I left the dog in there. I had to leave the dog in there. he was very opinionated about this situation. But I think that is a very fair point made in that voicemail about Dino Babers. All right, everybody says, okay, if they don't get to X, Y, and Z, you got to fire the coach. What's your plan after that? I have questioned that for years. It's easy to say fire the coach. It's easy to tweet fire the coach. But what is your plan? I don't want Syracuse or anybody to feel pigeonholed to one particular coach. Even Nick Saban at some point could be vulnerable, right? But what is the plan beyond that? And I don't even know the answer to this question. I'm just going to ask it rhetorically at this point, and maybe we can figure this out as the season goes. What's the market like for coaches at the end of this season? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? But as we go back to episode 2, that's a point that I made in that show, that I don't feel that John Wildhack would fire Dino Babers one way or the other. I think he would just let him retire. But if he wins 7 or 8 games, then you have to give him an extension. It is a fascinating this or that when it comes to Dino Babers. There is no in between this season. So a couple of good voicemails there. We appreciate you checking in there. Once again, the phone number to leave us a voicemail on the show is 315-552-1964. Speaking of Syracuse football and speaking of traditions, there's just one more thing. I was struck recently by a social media exchange, shout out to Matt in Manoa, about traditions, or maybe their lack thereof. The back and forth spawned from seeing former SU star Sean Tucker wearing the number 44 as a rookie with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Tucker entered rarefied air as one of the greatest running backs in SU history, which of course lit the old sparks about why the famed number 44 isn't worn anymore. Tucker seemed amenable to wearing 44 at first, but then ultimately decided that he'd rather have his number 34 stand as his legacy. Understandable. Now, Matt's point was that Syracuse had botched the tradition by retiring 44, making it, in his words, quote, a dusty trophy on a shelf and not an active tradition. My point to Matt was it takes 2 to tango for a tradition like that to survive. I have no issue with Tucker or any player forging their own legacy. But here's where I'm going to meet Matt in the middle. We live in an era where the fabric of college sports has become the sweater song by Weezer. Conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, and television money are holding the thread and walking away. The firm line between professional and college sports has almost permanently faded. Syracuse football's a little light on tradition these days, let's face it. It doesn't have a true blue rivalry game. Would Ohio State, Michigan be moved to a baseball stadium? Please. The last game on the schedule this year is Wake Forest. Doesn't exactly scream end-of-the-year rivalry game, does it? It really tells you all you need to know. If Syracuse's grandest tradition is a number that has been out of circulation for nearly 20 years, then that needs to change. A tradition isn't just a look to the past for warm and fuzzy feelings. Tradition lives on. It reminds of the past, but it also has a future. Matt said it best, an active tradition. I think that's what Matt is yearning for. I think it's what most fans are concerned about in the modern era of college football. Now, we get why television deals are important, but no one's buying a jersey that's got, hey, look, $40 million from ESPN on the back of it. Come on. Debating star rankings for prospective recruits or transfers has been replaced with who can get a bigger NIL deal, like their NFL free agents. In turbulent times, Syracuse football fans are looking for comfort food, and the cupboard is bare. Now, I'm never going to replicate my grandmother's old spaghetti sauce recipe, but I sure do enjoy trying. It's an active tradition in my house on Sundays when the gravy's on the stove. So, Matt, I would say this to you. Put it in your hands. Make your own game day tradition and cherish that instead of pointing at Syracuse and blaming them for not keeping the flame of the 44 lit. That's episode 3 of Syracuse Sports. I want to thank our guest, Mike Waters. I'd also like to thank Nate Mink, Lauren Long, Scott Schild, and Krista Lemzak for their technical assistance. And thank you for watching and listening today. Please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And while you are there, leave us a review. It really helps us stand out. We'll talk to you next time.